You might want to put a name tag down for the rest of you.
We on? Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank everybody for joining us here for the very first meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee. Just a couple of housekeeping things real quick, since I know several of you have not been in this building before. If you need restrooms, our restrooms are just outside the doors over here on the other side of this wall. We also have coffee, some snacks, some bottled water and stuff just behind this wall here. Feel free at any time to get up, help yourself, whatever you need. If you need anything else, please let me or staff know, and we'll be happy to take care of anything else you need. Over in Cottonwood, the restrooms are going to be just outside the lobby. If you go out the main door over there and go left out of the board chambers, the restrooms are just behind the kiosk. And I think we've got, can you hear me okay over there, Supervisor Michaels? Awesome. Okay.
And yes, thank you.
Very good. And just to verify, you've got Mr. Black over in attendance with you?
Yes, you have Dr. Black, John Black, and Mary Chichon.
Awesome.
Chicoin. I keep saying that. My apologies. Once it sticks, it's forever.
Perfect.
Terrible.
Perfect. Very, very good. Thank you very much.
You bet.
So with a roll call here, I've already gone down, and we're just going to kind of do this informally today, but I've already gone down our list. We have Supervisor Michaels, Supervisor Oberg, Commissioner Peterson, Commissioner Osterman. We have Member Kintelme, and again, I'm going to mispronounce names, Chicoin. We have Dr. Black. We have Joe here. Sorry, Joe. And then we have Member Laney is here as well. We also have Vinny Gallegos, who is attending today basically as a member of the public. Mr. Gallegos is on the board agenda to be appointed to serve our at-large role, so his appointment will be considered next week at the Board of Supervisors meeting. But we wanted to invite him and have him in attendance with us today as well. So, so that's the roll call on that front. Go ahead and share the PowerPoint if you would. So our very first order of business, as I said in my emails, this is going to be more of a business meeting, because we've got to set up the ground rules. As with any appointed committee, we have to elect officers. We need to take care of meeting dates, times, the housekeeping of the public body. So first off, let's see. Let me actually go through and we'll do some introductions here real quick. If we could start, let's go ahead and start in the Verde Valley, if we may. Dr. Michaels, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's good to have you here and in a planning process, which many of us have been waiting to have happen. So I'm your District 3 supervisor, been involved with community plan and community plan development for a number of years, and I'm looking forward to this update process. There are many opportunities throughout this evolutionary, as Mr. Williams likes to call it, and it is, process, to ensure that we take every opportunity to drill down where we can and should and must as it relates to the update of the plan process. And we have some ideas. I've already read some of yours and I like them, and there's an opportunity here, I think, to really reflect our values across Yavapai County. And I look forward to serving and want to address, when the time is right and on our agenda, the role in which a supervisor might play in this process. So to that effect, or to that end, I welcome all of you and look forward to working with all of you as well. To my immediate left is Dr. Black, John Black, whom I've known for a number of years. And John, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right, I think I've got the microphone on now. It's kind of an awkward position in that I'm looking over here at the video monitor, and I suppose the camera over there is watching me, so I'll try to be able to see you while I'm talking. My name is John Black. I have spent most of my career in developing industry standards for the computer industry, industrial automation and so forth. That involves sitting down with hundreds of stakeholders, getting their inputs, collecting them, synthesizing them, creating standards documents, and then having them reviewed by the same groups of people. In other words, building a consensus about how we want to go about standardizing things. So I've had some experience in this kind of work, even though I've never worked on something like a comprehensive plan. I'm looking forward to working with everyone and meeting everyone, and I think I hope we can develop a plan that we can be proud of and that can be a example for other counties within the state. Thank you.
Very good. And Dr. Black, is there enough cabling on that microphone to move it over to your table, or can ITS, if they're present there, move something over?
That would be ideal.
Yes. Yeah, let's keep it informal today.
We're just going to record really quickly.
Okay, that's fine.
If you give us just a minute, we'll make that happen over here.
Great.
Okay. Do I need to? Good morning. I am Mary Shaquin. I actually live in the Beaver Creek community, and I'm a part of Mr. James District. A little bit about my background. I've lived here 10 years now. I was actually a part of the planning process 10 years ago and was on several committees at that time and actually reviewed the final plan. Personally, I have my own consulting firm working with nonprofits. A bulk of the work I do is in strategic planning and integrated marketing and all aspects of organizational development and fundraising. I have several clients. My main client here in the Verde Valley is I am the executive director of the Verde Valley Regional Economic Organization.
Great. Thank you very much, Mary. Over here in Prescott, why don't we go ahead and start off? Supervisor Oberg?
Okay, Harry Oberg from Prescott. I'm the District 1 supervisor. My area goes from about 2/3 of Prescott down to Wickenburg, on over to Castle Hot Springs and Baghdad, and I've been pushing pretty hard with trying to get people in that area to let me know how they feel about where they want their communities to go in the future, and I think we've had pretty good participation in the surveys here, and so obviously I've got a very large district, but we have a lot of ground to cover here in Yavapai County, and I think every district is a little diverse in some of the things that they have going on. And so I think it's going to be very interesting to go through this process and see what the requirements are and the needs, and sometimes the wants that we're going to have from the various districts. But looking forward to working with everybody, and looking forward to working with everybody down in Cottonwood too. Thank you.
Fantastic. Commissioner Osterman.
Well, good morning. My name is Kevin Osterman. I'm Planning and Zoning Commissioner, originally appointed for District 1, Mr. Supervisor Oberg's district. This is my second time in a comprehensive planning environment. I did it also for the city of Scottsdale for our general plan. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody. I'd like to really put together something that works for all the communities, works for all of Yavapai County.
Fantastic. Commissioner Peterson.
I'm Commissioner Peterson. I've been a commissioner on the Planning and Zoning Committee for, this is my third term, so I think that's probably going on 10 years. I moved to Arizona to here, Prescott, excuse me, 15 years ago from the Bay Area. So coming from the Bay Area, I know what can be done incorrectly. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody on this.
Vinny, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Glad to be with you all today. Name is Vinny Gallegos. I'm the administrator of the Central Yavapai Metropolitan Planning Organization, or SIMPO for short. For those that aren't familiar with what an MPO is, they exist throughout the United States. I think we have about 410 of them, but they're for urbanized areas, for transportation, regional transportation planning. So our MPO for this area is with the small urbanized area of Prescott and Prescott Valley, but our planning area is the central Yavapai area. So essentially the Quad City area with Prescott, Prescott Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, Chino Valley, and parts of unincorporated Yavapai County. So when people ask, it's, you know, what does the future for transportation look like for highways, roads, public transit, bicycle, pedestrian? So that's the work that we do. I'm born and raised in Prescott, Arizona, been here all my life, so definitely love our community and looking forward to serving on this committee with you all.
Thank you.
My name is
Connie.
Connie Cantelme. I'm a citizen of Prescott. Moved up here full-time probably 16 years ago. All of my parents moved me here in 1972, and I kind of flew the coop for a while down to the valley. I am a licensed general contractor in the state of Arizona, and I did a lot of work for the ROC and, of course, ran my company in custom home building. Trying to retire, but I also sit on the appeals board for the city of Prescott, and very interested in what's going to be happening in counting in terms of codes and energy and planning. I think planning is always essential, and I think that's been one of our weak spots, so it's was welcome for me to be onto this committee and see what's going on in the county.
Very good. Sandra.
My name is Sandra Laney, and I'm from Prescott Valley, and I serve on the Prescott Valley Planning and Zoning Commission. And I moved here from Chandler, Arizona, about 8 years ago. And I lived in Chandler for 20 years. And before that, I lived in Nevada, I lived in California, and I lived in Washington, where I was born. And I've been a community activist my whole life. So I'm excited to be on this comprehensive plan. And actually, I was on the very first committee that developed the planning plan for the town of Simi Valley. That's how far back I go. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Awesome.
And working with all of you.
That's wonderful. Elizabeth, let me jump over to you since you're staff with the county. Joe, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hi, my name is Joe Turvelati. I'm IT tech for Humboldt Unified School District. I come from Chino Valley. Moved here with my wife back in 2018. Stage fright. I love it. But yeah, I've had IT experience over 30 years. Worked in both private and public sectors, mostly public since I've been with the working with school districts for the past 15 years. So I work with kids, teachers, staff, and so forth. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here. This is a totally new demographic for me. Although I did try to apply or try to run for mayor of my town, McCleary in Washington. It's a little town not too far from Olympia, Washington, but yeah, that was my kind of first foray into this type of arena. So I'm just very excited to be able to put my input in here and yeah, get to meet you fine folks and get to work with you.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll bounce back.
I'm Elizabeth Glowacki. I'm a hydrologist with Yavapai County Flood Control District. Previously, I was in the planning department with Yavapai County. I have an undergraduate degree in urban planning and a master's degree in emergency management. So I'm just hoping to bring some of my background to the table and excited to be part of this.
And Elizabeth is one of our staff experts that we're bringing into this to provide the flood control aspect of this, but also because of her planning background. So she'll be providing support as we go through this whole process. Kazi?
Okay, yeah. Hi, my name is Kazi Haq. I'm the current planning manager and land use and planning manager. I've been working for county since August of last year. It's been a pleasure to be part of this. Before that, I worked for the city of Maricopa. It's in Pinal County for last 15 years, and I retired there last summer. Prior to that, I had experience with the comprehensive plan and general plan starting in Ozarks, Missouri, where I lived there for 18 years. So I have over 20 years of experience. I'm very honored to be part of this program, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
And I'm Dave Williams. I'm Director of Development Services here for the county. I have been in the planning world for over 20 years in Arizona on the public and private sector. This will be my second major plan that I've worked on in my career. I also helped with the Town of Queen Creek general plan back in, 2008 or 7, something like that, long time ago. But this will be the second major one, but I've been also author and have worked through several other large community plans related to 5-part master plans, transportation plans, municipal campus build out, wireless plans. So I've been very deeply involved in the planning process for a number of years. And my background is odd in that, my undergrad is a criminal justice degree with a minor in broadcasting. However, I started in planning with my parents in their real estate company before I turned 18, and have a master's degree in public administration with an emphasis actually in planning. So I'm, as a staff member who's kind of responsible for this, I want to thank everybody for coming to the table, volunteering your time, your services for this project, because this really is critical. I've been one of the outspoken critics of our current comprehensive plan, especially over the last several months. I think we can do better. And I think we've got a group of people here at the table today who will help us do better. So our staff is here to support these efforts. So I really want to thank you for your time, though, coming forward and volunteering. So our first order of business is, we could bring the PowerPoint back up. Our first order of business is going to be election of officers. And this is something that we need to go ahead and appoint a chairman, vice chair, and secretary for those positions. And basically, the chairman will run the meetings going forward. I'm going to take care of today's meeting, but the chairman will take over those duties and run forward and run the meetings in the future. Again, staff will be here to help support all of those activities, but they're going to be predominantly responsible for, presiding over the meetings, calling for votes, and the chairman, in this case, the bylaws that we'll talk about in a minute, the chairman will vote on all matters to take care of that. So it is a voting position. With that, I'd like to go ahead and open the floor for any nominations. If anybody would like to express any interest in being chairman.
I nominate Mr. Osterman.
Okay. So we have a vote for Mr. Whoops, I hear somebody talking.
Yes, we're over here. It's so hard sometimes in this hybrid world we live in. Mary would like to make a comment.
Yes, I'd like
Yes, Mary.
to be considered for chairman of the committee.
Okay. And then I also saw Mr. Peterson raise his hand up. Would any of you three like to make any comments related to being chairman? Or chairwoman, I'm sorry.
Chairperson.
Chairperson. Mr. Osterman, would you like to make any comments?
Well, real quickly, I'm quite familiar with this process, and I'm looking forward to working on it. I don't necessarily have to be chairman. I have some experience chairing, and I'd be more than glad to serve if selected.
Okay. Mr. Peterson.
Just as a comment from my perspective, working with the planning staff for the last 10 years, I think would help me provide the chairmanship some substance in essence, and I would like to do it. So.
Okay. And Mary, would you like to make a comment?
Sure. I don't necessarily have the same expertise as my fellow committee members. However, I have chaired many boards in my history. One of the things I also do is I work with boards on process and ensuring that the bylaws and job descriptions and everyone is playing the role that they're supposed to be playing and providing oversight as it means running and working with the board and then collaborating with staff, et cetera. So I have a great deal of experience in working with boards.
Okay. So since we have 3 people up for nomination right now, let me start off by saying, would anybody like to withdraw their nomination?
I think there's a desire for a comment over here too, Mr. Williams.
Okay. Yes, please. And I apologize because I can't see the Verde Valley, so please just speak up if anybody has
I understand
comments.
completely. Do not worry about that. I don't have strong enough glasses to see you guys, even with the screen. So we're going to rely on each other to make sure we're all getting an equal opportunity to speak. Mr. Black.
Well, I have chaired subcommittees for development standards and so forth, so I'm familiar with the process. I don't necessarily need to be the chairman. I plan to play a very active role, but not necessarily as chairman.
Mr. Williams, the only thing that I would add to Dr. Black's comment is that I think it's critically important that it be community outside of county that chairs this process or this group. Not that our folks within the county, either in a P&Z a role or a different role, can't do a fine job. I just think that this needs to be clearly citizen-driven, and keeping that in mind as we think about our candidates for chair and vice chair, in my mind, are important.
Okay, very good. And did I hear, as part of that discussion, Mr. Black is interested in being chair as well?
I'm willing, but I'm sure there are other people that are quite qualified.
Okay.
I think that's a yes.
You think that's a yes? Okay. So here's going to be our dilemma. We have 4 people up right now with a total of 10 votes. If we can, why don't we just kind of go down the list and do we'll do a voice vote for the Verde and then just a raise of hands over here, see if we can't knock a couple of them out. Let's go ahead and start off. So Mr. Osterman was first. We have a show of hands by anybody interested in voting for Mr. Osterman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over here. Can we do a voice vote in the Verde?
Mr. Williams, I think Mary would like to make a comment, please.
You know, I'm not sure I'm totally comfortable with the way this process is laying out. And I'm not sure I have another solution, but it's, it seems there's obviously a great deal of understanding of the individuals over, in the west side that all know each other, and there isn't a great deal of knowledge of some of us over here. But I would also like to support Supervisor Michael's statement that I'm not sure it should be staff that should be heading this, that it should be, pardon me? Or planning and zoning, something like that. I mean, the key understanding is with the county to work with the citizens of the county in defining what their vision should look like and what the county plan should look like. And I just think there'll be far more credibility to our process if someone like that was elected. And it doesn't have to be me. I'm just speaking on what I think would be most beneficial.
Let me, if I may, sometimes you have to slow down to go fast. And I'm wondering if it might be useful to the group, and it's a question, to hold off on this selection process until everyone who is a candidate who's been nominated today can send out information to other committee members, and there can be an opportunity for phone conversation, etc. And then either by email or phone, or frankly at the very next meeting, that we hold this election. And people, I think, might have a a higher degree of comfort in two things: knowing who they're voting for, which is critically important, and two, the process that they have adopted rather than we have promulgated. Dr. Black.
Okay, this is John Black. I had to fill out an application of advisory board here, and some of the questions were asked were, what are your reasons and desire for wanting to serve? Please include special interests, abilities, skills, or contacts that you could benefit the group with. Would you be willing and have the time to serve as on a subcommittee or do special studies? Describe your previous experience on advisory groups. I would like to see this information about everyone on the committee to know what their background is and understand a little bit better. I mean, I don't know anybody on the committee right now, so I don't really feel I'm in a position to express a vote on who should be in the positions.
Would the group have a problem with that process to share this information?
If we could just distribute this to everybody so we can all read it.
Yeah. And if I may, I know we'll come right back to you, Connie. We do not have that information on all members of this body. That is a volunteer application, which is the initial application at the county to volunteer. We can certainly put something together over the next month. If I may make a recommendation here, and then I'll hand the floor over to you, Connie. If everybody would like to go ahead and vote, I am happy to continue just running the committee, acting as the interim chair until we get that settled. If everybody wanted to go ahead and vote for that, that would be official enough. We're a public body. We just have to have somebody who is responsible, and I'm happy to continue that role.
No, I appreciate that on your part, David, because I know what your schedule is. Yeah, so that's kind of you, and we do need somebody to, steer the boat here. But that I think, from my perspective, makes it a very positive next step. If you'll do that, and we can have that assurance from you, then we can share the information with each other and initiate conversations that would bring comfort or confidence in whatever the vote would be the next time around.
Yes,
and what you might also get then, Dave, when we're sending this out is that obviously there are several of us who would like to be chair, but if that's not meant to me, we might be willing to serve as vice chair or secretary of the board. So you might be able to do all of that at once in an email and get it really clean. And maybe easier for you. Let's hope, Dave.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting half the
I don't
body
really
to
see
raise
any
their
reason to
hands.
rush into this.
So-
I think, David, you're quite capable of doing this for the time being, and we can decide when we want to elect officers.
And it's not
Very
punishment.
good. So before we go to a vote here, we've got a few hands over here already. Connie, go ahead. You have the floor
Can I
next.
make a comment as to the process of this, having served myself on several committees? Would it be possible to ask for and get a short bio of the people that have put their names in the hat for the chair to be sent out through the email to everybody, and maybe a private vote where we could vote for the chair, the vice?
Well, we're going to talk about the private vote. It's going to have to be a vote at the next meeting. We'll talk about that in a minute as far as open meeting law. But I have no objection to putting that together, making it an agendized item at the next meeting.
Because I think to her point, she's absolutely right. It would be nice to get a more detailed background on everybody that's decided to step up. I think it's great, by the way. I think this is a good sign that this committee will be. Yeah.
I think so.
But yeah, I think the process could be handled that way, where we could actually take the time to read the bios.
Okay, very good. Sandra, give me just a moment. Mr. Peterson was next.
I was going to make a motion, but if Sandra wants to comment.
Well, let's go ahead. Sandra, go ahead.
My comment would be that I understand that the people in Cottonwood probably feel that they're not tied into over here in Prescott, and living in Prescott Valley, I understand. I would like to see either the chair or the vice chair come from Cottonwood. If the chair is from this area, then the vice chair should be Cottonwood, and make that stipulation that either the chair or the vice chair would be from Cottonwood.
Okay. We can certainly put that in. We'll tackle that when we get to approval of bylaws in just a couple minutes here. And then Mr. Peterson?
If I may, I'd like to make a motion to delay the vote on a chairman until the next meeting, and
I second.
And request Dave to continue the chair spot for current time.
You have a second on the floor.
Very good. And I did hear that from Ms. Michaels, or Dr. Michaels. Thank you very much. And then let's go ahead and do we can do a hand vote over here in Prescott, and then we could do a voice vote in Cottonwood. So all those in favor? Okay.
Aye.
3. Okay. And then over in Cottonwood, do we have 3 votes over there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Very good, thank you. So we will go ahead and I will take care of that. I'll put bios together for everybody. We'll get information, put that out. It'll be part of a packet that will come out to everybody before the next meeting. So thank you very much. So our next
Thank you,
order
David,
of-
because I know that's more work, but I think the end will be the product we want and the process we need. Thank you for that.
I think so. I think so. So our next item is agenda item number 5. This is a housekeeping item. By law, we have to publish where the meetings are going to be held and when. Right now, based on the survey I put out to everybody about a month or so ago, we have positioned this for the Thursday in between the 2 board meetings. That seem to be the 1 week. It sometimes is the 2nd week, sometimes is the 3rd week, but that seems to be the 2nd Thursday of the month after the board meeting seems to be the best date that works for everybody. And what I've done is I've run that date out for the rest of this year. So we would meet again on 5/13, 6/10, 7/15, 8/12. And let's just take this in pieces. Does anybody have any concerns over that day of the month? Okay, hearing none, we now have to establish a time. Does 10 a.m. work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And then we have to also designate a primary location for the meeting. We held the meeting here because we still had a mixture of COVID rules and opening buildings up and everything else. So I decided to go ahead and put the meeting here at Commerce Street. But what I would like to do is shift this meeting back into Fair Street and Cottonwood Annex for our full-time meetings. So what we would do is we would advertise it at 1015 Fair Street as our primary location for meeting, with a secondary location streaming into Cottonwood. And that way we can address, convenience for everybody to get to the meeting. We can continue to hold the meeting as well on WebEx. So if people, are unable to attend, or it's easier to attend virtually, we can continue that. But that's the framework I've set up. Do we have any discussion on that item? Are there any thoughts, any changes recommended?
David, the only thing that I might pitch in here for consideration is that we have an opportunity for both sides to be, when it's safe to do so, physically present. All of us being together ultimately is going to be a better interaction to get to know one another, I think. And right now, of necessity, we have this hybrid model, but if we could rotate the opportunity to physically be either in Prescott or physically be in Cottonwood, that would seem to be a way for us to get to know one another a little bit better, because we're going to work until 2022 together, and I think the better we know who each other is, the better we'll work together.
I would second that. This is John Black. There's also some adjustments we can make to the cameras and so forth so that you can see all 3 of us in one camera, and perhaps we could use the microphones at the council desk so that we could speak more readily. So I think that would make it a lot easier for us to do the WebEx.
Yeah, we can better set this room for the next meeting.
I agree, and
The
I
other
apologize.
suggestion I would make, and this is just based on what we've done to me so far, it's really important to get close to your mic when you speak. I've noticed some of the people have had a lot of difficulty understanding what they were saying because they were sitting back from the mic, and we were hearing a lot of resonance in the room. So just a reminder, that's very helpful.
Unfortunately, we're running room mics over here as opposed to individual microphones that you have over there in Cottonwood. And that's the other reason why I want to shift this meeting out of Commerce and get it into a room that has better audio-visual support for us. So what I'm hearing right now is to go ahead and identify both locations. I have no objection. From a staff point of view, we're happy to support both locations, rotated each month back and forth. And I will also put forth an offer here. Because I have the staff in Prescott, we're happy to provide transportation over to Cottonwood for any members that want to meet here and then go over the hill. We're happy to provide that transportation for the meeting. We don't have as much staff in Cottonwood to reverse it and come over here, but we can make something else work for that. So other than changing and identifying both locations as primary locations, does anybody have any objections to the meeting, agenda item number 5, the dates, times, locations?
No.
Okay. If I could have a motion then?
So moved.
To accept as presented
As amended.
or as amended.
Second.
Very good. So we had a first from Mary, second from Kevin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that is unanimous. Very good. Excuse me. So our next item is the approval of the bylaws, and this was sent out as an attachment. They don't have a lot of detail as far as a slide presentation, but it was sent out as an attachment to everybody. We also have paper copies here. These bylaws mirror what was set up in Resolution 2048 by the Board of Supervisors, and it also carries through the operational aspects that we use for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at that? Is there any items for discussion or change on that? Other than the matter we had already discussed about the chairman shall be, we shall have one from each side of the county.
David, the only thing that and you and I talked about this, item B under Article 1, CPAC shall consist of 10 members and then be identified on. I want us to consider as a group today the responsibility of this group to include our First Nations people, at least have an invitation for our First Nations people to be represented on this committee. While it's true they're sovereign, it's also true that we all use the same water and that they were here long before we were, and that out of respect and engagement, looking toward the future of collaboration in many ways with our First Nations peoples, I would encourage us to consider expanding this committee to reflect that invitation as well.
Okay.
To Yavapai Apache Nation. By the way, I do have a candidate in mind that I can discuss this opportunity with, if you should so desire.
Yeah. Now, for this specific item, because the membership has already been set by board resolution, that resolution would have to change as far as being a voting member. But I do believe what we can do is under item E, where we list the ex officio members, we can go ahead and include in other agencies, in addition to county directors, other departments, we can include in other jurisdictions or agencies as ex officio members, and that would get them the seat at the table. Did you have any thoughts on that, Supervisor Michaels?
No, I think that's a fine idea. That works.
Okay, and I think
there's one other place you could do it as
decision
well, without having to go back to the full board, but that position works, and I just think it's incumbent upon this body to be very, very sensitive in this matter, and to extend that invitation and to hold that place as we go forward for our Yavapai Apache Nation.
Very, very good. And that is not something that would have to be board approved as far as the appointment. Ex officio member is something that we can do as staff and get them included in the mix. So I think that would probably be a very good change. Are there any other comments other than those two that we have on the bylaws? Or any other proposed changes, anything like that? Okay. Very good. With that, do I have a motion to approve the bylaws as amended?
So moved.
Okay, so I hear Supervisor Oberg.
Second.
And Mr. Osterman. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And the verdict is unanimous? I think I heard all three people in the verdict, so that one passes unanimous. Very good. Okay. Open meeting law training. So this is the nails on the chalkboard we're required to do. what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk through this. This is a presentation that has been cut down, but this is the presentation that the clerk of the board provides to all new committees and appointed bodies as they come in. So this is kind of our official county training. I have just pared it way down for today to only address things we really need to be concerned with. But most importantly, this body is subject to open meeting law requirements. Excuse me. Basically, all meetings of any public body need to be public meetings. We have to formally agendize this. People have the right to come in and make comment if we so elect to provide that venue for public comment. Today's meeting was advertised as no public comment, but the public is still able to come in and view the meeting. As we go forward, we'll talk about that. I'm sure we're going to want to open it up so that the public can come in, provide comment on our actions, provide additional input. But for today's business meeting, I've just kept us kind of locked down. So we have to be open. A meeting, and this is where it gets critical, is a gathering either in person or through technological devices of a quorum of the members of the public body. And that's why, coming back to the comment about being able to vote on email, that's something we can't do. That would be a decision being made behind the scenes. When we talk about email, the one thing that is absolutely critical is every email you will get from our office has every member blind copied. Okay. I can transmit information out as a staff member. I can send one way because that's the operation of the body. But what we can't have is somebody accidentally hit reply to all and ask a question on an item. When we have that happen, that creates an open meeting law violation. And these are something, the open meeting law violations are something we take very seriously because on many levels, as individuals, you are personally liable for an open meeting law violation. So if a complaint comes in, it went to the AG's office, which is where it would be investigated, you could personally be responsible for writing a $500 check as a fine for a first offense. So I tried very hard on our level to prevent any possibility of somebody violating the open meeting law on that. So we have to be very cognizant of our communications. The safest way, of course, is whenever we have any majority, we have to advertise the meeting, whether it's a study session or we're just getting together for a barbecue. If we have a quorum of the membership together, we must advertise it. The public must be invited. Again, they don't have to participate. We don't have to provide them a hamburger or hot dog, but they're allowed to be there. Legal action is any collective decision, commitment, or promise made by a public body. As part of this, you're going to be asked to provide staff a lot of direction on things. That is a collective decision. It's a commitment. We're moving forward in that. So every action that we take here is, considered part of an open meeting. That is a legal action. Public body, down on the bottom, it's basically any person appointed or elected to a public body, falls under this. So, there are limitations. Staff meetings, if I combine my staff together to talk about something, that's not, but appointed officials must be. Again, quorum is a majority. In this case, 6 or more members is a quorum. Circumvention of open meeting law, and this is critical. Public officials may not circumvent public discussion by splintering the quorum or having a separate or serial discussions with a majority of public members. So what you can't do is you can't send an email to 4 people and then send another email to another 4 people. You've just violated open meeting law because we now have an aggregate total of the quorum that's been communicating together. One thing I do want to point out, your email, if it is used for official purposes, so if you're communicating back and forth with staff or you are communicating with other members, your personal email for those records that are specific to the public body are public record. I don't anticipate anything weird there, but I just want to put the caveat out. We have to be very cognizant of your emails and your communication. So, let me see here. Circumvention, again, I can't run around and poll people. So you're not going to have me go around and say, Sandra, what do you think? Connie, what do you think? Vinny, how about you? that's never going to happen. You know, we're going to provide the information. I'm happy to answer questions individually, but we're not going to try to collect votes and try to figure out ahead of time, you know, what something should be. We're not going to share your thoughts with other members. Email, I would just kind of talked about that. Disclosure, we have to disclose all the public meetings, including executive sessions. I'm not anticipating any executive session items related to this body, but we do have a provision in our agenda that in the event something massively legal is triggered, we need to pull the attorney in, we need to talk, we can do it, but I don't anticipate that ever occurring in this body. I can tell you at the Planning Commission, it hardly never happens. So I don't see that ever occurring, but that's why that's on the agenda. We have to very cleanly disclose what our business is. You know, as you look at the agenda today, we're very cleanly discussing the items. I'm asking for direction. I try to be very clear in our communication. Public notice of meetings, this is what we voted on earlier as far as where the meetings are going to be held, how they're going to be held. We also have to conform with ADA. That's normal. You know, we take care of that automatically. Agendas, we have to post agendas 24 hours in advance for this body. We don't have anything here that we have to advertise in the newspaper. There's no triggers like we have at the Planning and Zoning. So we always try to get it done a week ahead of time, but there may be minor modifications up to 24 hours prior to the meeting. Contents, you know, staff will take care of all of that. But one thing we need to be cognizant of is we need to stay on topic of the agenda. Now, there's a little leeway there, and this is where, you know, my role comes in, that if I think we're getting off of the agenda, I think we're getting too far into another area, you will hear me rein the discussion back in, you know, recenter it, bring it back to where we are on the agenda so that we can move forward. My job is to protect the body. So I'm going to act in the role of, you know, the quasi-attorney. I'm going to keep us, you know, where we need to be as far as what we're doing to make sure that all of these laws have been addressed and taken care of. Call to the public, as I mentioned earlier, we can have a call to the public. And quite frankly, on further agendas, I'm going to put it on there so that the public has an opportunity to speak. I just didn't feel it was appropriate to open it up today because we're talking more about the business and our operation. So, but we'll put it on there. One discussion we'll have to have will be how long should a member of the public be able to speak. Traditionally, we use either 2 minutes or 3 minutes. I'll probably go to 3 minutes as a recommendation for this body, because the people I'm imagining we're going to have come forward are not people used to public speaking. They're not going to be used to engaging their elected body. We want to give them a little more time. One of the things that you see so often is people get up there and then they tell us this really long story about every great thing that's happened in their community and why something should be done this way. And then, 10 seconds left to actually tell us what they wanted to tell us. So
David,
we'll give a little
on that. I think it's critically
Yes, ma'am.
important that you've included this, and thank you for doing so. Of all of the meetings that we have, in my opinion, and in my policy and planning background, it's so important that however the process unfolds time-wise, that we do understand as a body that our intent is to have everyone fully heard. If anything triggers an emotion more than a community plan, once people understand it and get engaged in it, I don't know what it is, except a development project next door to them. And so once folks begin to understand the critical nature of this document and how it's going to define not only who we are, but who we become, and matters that are pretty emotional, whether it's land density, open space, water, cultural issues, how we want to handle the environment, etc. I think folks need to be walk away, the take away from their experience with this body is that whether we agreed or not, or their information was included or not, that they were heard. As a hearing official that I do in my other life, even though I render a decision against or not in favor of the defendant, they know, because I work very hard at it, that they were heard and they may not have liked the outcome, but they respect it. And a part of our historical challenge, and David, you and I have talked about this, and you certainly have experienced it, is that the plan that we have, has a lot of shortfalls, as David has pointed out. But key to that is that the community wasn't as engaged as perhaps it could have been by a body such as we are. And we can't talk around that enough. And so where we can provide latitude in the timing of testimony, I encourage us to do it. Thank you.
Yes.
We have
One thing I want
comments
to.
over here.
No, go ahead, Mr. Black.
This is
Dr.
John Black. David and I have exchanged some emails on this topic. This has to do with my own experience in developing large specification documents and so forth, sort of parallel to a comprehensive plan. You start off with a rough draft, and you go through many iterations, taking inputs from many different sources, incorporating changes, deleting sections, adding sections, and so forth. So it's not uncommon to have, 20, 30, 40, even 50 drafts before you finally get to your final draft. So the process I'm concerned about is, David wrote us an email, an introductory email, and I'll read it here. It says, "We ask that you not send emails or communicate to the group, and please limit your communication between members of this body. An email, phone calls, or communication individually to multiple members of the group constitutes an open meeting law violation." So the question in my mind is, let's say we have maybe 10 elements in the comprehensive plan. We got the 8 mandated by the state, maybe we come up with a couple more. It would be possible to have, maybe break it into 10 drafts and work on them in parallel, get the job done quickly. Different members of the committee might decide to focus their efforts on some particular element. But there's going to be multiple drafts, and those drafts need to be reviewed by others within the committee, not necessarily as a final review, but as a process, okay? So, for example, if I were to edit a draft and then I wanted to send it to the other members of the committee for them to review, comment on, maybe mark up, or even discuss in the meeting, I seem to be prevented from doing that by this. My suggestion was that we send the drafts to David and then let David broadcast it to the group. And I don't know that that's, I don't know what David, you mentioned that you talked to the county attorney.
Let me address that.
He didn't see
I have
that as
spoken to
satisfying the open meeting requirements. So I'm puzzled at this stage as to how we would proceed in developing this document if we're not permitted to communicate with each other. The other issue is, if we had a draft and we wanted to review it, maybe in the session, people would need to read it ahead of time. They'd need time to do that. And then in the session, people could make their comments about changes they'd like to see and so forth, public session. That draft should also be made available to the public prior to the meeting, and not just a couple of days prior to the meeting, maybe 2 weeks. So, because some of these drafts may get to be fairly extensive and require some thought and time. So I'm looking for some way we can set up a procedure where, let's say we have subcommittees, or maybe individuals within the group that have taken on the job of producing one element and offering it to the group for review. What is the procedure that we use for circulating these documents and still stay within the open meeting requirements?
So the county attorney has reviewed that request very specifically, and it is a violation of open meeting law and circumventing of the public body. Where we're planning to do is to provide rough drafts one meeting for discussion, and then provide the final draft at the next meeting, and then if we have changes, and it would carry forward as an old business item until we reach a point where everybody is satisfied with it. We're planning to work, and we're going to get into this here in a little bit on the comprehensive plan update, work on individual elements as we go forward through the month. So we're not taking a bite at the whole document, we're taking a bite at small sections of it. But as I said, the county attorney has very specifically reviewed your request and has indicated that it would be a violation of the open meeting law.
Okay, so my concern here, based on my own experience in developing documents like this, is most of the work is done outside the committee, in that someone has to sit at the keyboard and type and make changes and so forth. You can bring them into the committee meeting, you can get verbal comments from the committee members, which are recorded and heard by the public and so forth. You can also get inputs from the public. That's not detailed enough. I mean, if I have a draft that's 10 pages long and someone has some extensive changes they want to make, they can mark up the draft. Suppose they just hand the draft to me, as say I'm the scribe for that particular element, and I can incorporate those changes. How do we establish a process where handing a document between us, which is really what we're going to need to do, is within the open meeting law? If we don't archive it, if we don't make it available in some way to the public, how do we accomplish what we need to do?
You don't. Everything has to be done in the clear light of day, per the open meeting law. This is a state statute. Staff will be writing the rough drafts, providing them to you for comment. So staff will be taking that on, and then, the advisory committee's job at that point is to provide direction back to staff to modify, make changes. That's why we're planning to do one element at a time. That's why we're also taking the small elements first to get everybody up to speed. But everything you're proposing is in clear violation of the open meeting law per the county attorney. So I have to defer to the county attorney's expertise on this.
I just want to be on record as saying that I don't believe that we will be able to accomplish what we want to if we're limited to verbal comments in the meetings.
Okay. Written comments can be provided in the meeting. That can be fine, but what I cannot do is I cannot take your comments and then redistribute to members soliciting additional comments on that. That is discussing business outside of the open meeting. So, and this is how
you could not take a
every
marked up
plan and
draft, for example, that I submit to you, put it on online so that people could download it prior to the meeting where we'll have the discussion. So they would know what's going to be discussed in the meeting. They would be able to follow even a single word change by what we're talking about here, it couldn't be written down. Everything would have to be verbal. And that's fine if you've only got a few words that need to change. But if you're wanting to add a paragraph, or if you're wanting to maybe add another subsection to the element, how do we do that verbally?
you don't. It has to be provided in an open meeting. As I said, my job is to defend you here, and the county attorney's job is to help defend me, and the county attorney has made that very clear, how the body needs to move forward based on that. This is how every zoning ordinance amendment is changed, how every plan the county works on, every government agency in Arizona works under this very same model because of the open meeting law requirements. And this is something that is very distinctly different between corporate and public.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dave, excuse me, Dave.
Yes. Mr. Peterson, go ahead.
I don't understand the complexity of this because, for instance, today we're going to be talking about the energy item that you'd like to send out or produce for the public. We're going to discuss it today. We're going to suggest changes to you today. You're going to make those changes. And then we can discuss it again next month. So yes. That can be done with any item that we're going to be discussing.
Correct. And today what we're asking for when we get to that item is just approval to release the questions to start the survey. So, it's the approval to go ahead and initiate that we're talking about today.
But if we want to edit that or make changes to it, we can do that today in the meeting.
We can do it today in the meeting without any problem at all. And, once we get the questions answered, we get the surveys back, then we'll be, formulating a rough draft of that to provide to you and have the same discussion we're having here today. But that way, the public is present for the discussion. The public may comment on the discussion and matters related to that. Yes.
Thank you.
Connie.
What about the educational proponent of some issues that the body may need to be brought up to speed on? Mm-hmm. Is that something your staff is responsible for, and yes. How does that get initiated?
Yeah, education as far as the body goes, we're able to provide education on any of the topics. We're able to delve into it deeply. We can provide that as a work study. We can provide it as a discussion, action item, whatever we need to do. That discussion is just fine as long as it's on an agendized, on a properly done agenda.
And do you ever at any point anticipate bringing in just for the lack of any other description, like an expert witness on something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, especially when we get to hydrology, the water
Exactly.
resources.
Yep.
When we get to transportation, we'll be bringing in Mr. Cherry, Public Works Director, so that he is directly involved in that. Yes, there's other elements where we have to bring in that expertise, and it's envisioned as part of the comprehensive plan process and state law. So, are there any more questions on this? Let me kind of roll through the rest of this here. Again, agenda items, if it's not on the agenda, we cannot discuss it. With exceedingly rare exception. Let me see, still there? Yes, and as a reminder, violation of the open meeting law is a $500 fine, and it is payable by the person who violates it. There is no qualified immunity for violating the open meeting law or any decisions, anything else. That is a personal liability per state law. Are we in a meeting? Is there a quorum? It's in person, some type of medium, online, email, chats, anything like that. Are you discussing, proposing legal action? Yes. Basically that constitutes a meeting. Avoiding pitfalls, don't poll other members. Limit discussions with other board members to the public meetings. Don't send emails to each other. Again, I cannot emphasize that enough. I don't expect it. However, it is not unusual to have the newspapers in this county put in a public records request for your email. Okay, my county email, about every week, I get, a public records request to disclose documents. Your personal email, as being a member of this body, your personal email is subject to this release. When meetings are over, they're over. We need to disband. It's done talking about business, So, any other questions on open meeting law? No, hearing none.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave, can I just ask one? Because
Yes,
I'm on another entity with the county that's elected by the board. My emails are not open to public meeting law. So I'm going to suggest, because, I have private client emails, et cetera, that I do not want the public to have access to because it's my private email. I think each of us should be given a county email then that communication is on, and then it becomes a non-issue. Because I have a real problem if this makes my emails public. And I'm on the Industrial Development Authority board, and that is not the case. And again, we are governed by open meeting law as well.
Yes. There are privacy issues with that particular body that do not exist with this body.
Okay.
My recommendation, I do not know the county policies allow additional emails being created for this type of a purpose. Because again, that ties into Microsoft licensing, it ties into other items. I would have to talk to our ITS department. My recommendation would be to create a free email like Gmail and push all of the emails into that. But what I will say is, if we have a request for your email, that does not mean all of your email is subject to release. Only the emails pertinent to this body.
Okay, that's what I want to
So,
be sure of,
and-
because I've had issues with the public meeting requests before, just because of
Yes.
life in general. And I want to make sure that the clear boundaries are there, because obviously,
That's my understanding. So
Okay,
only
Yes.
perfect.
the-
Yeah.
It'll only-
those emails germane to this body.
perfect,
Yes,
thank you.
correct. Everything else does not have to be released.
Okay.
And I can tell you, and again, I think this is a very low probability of it occurring, but if it happens, if we get one, you're going to be talking with me and my county attorney. We will be very controlling what that release is and basically protecting you as part of that release. Even my county email, there are still things that are not subject to release out of my county email or, Supervisor Michael's or Oberg's, because they are confidential, they are protected, personal identifying information, there are still things that are protected, but I just want everybody really cognizant of this because it's becoming an issue more and more. Yavapai County is running 10 years behind Phoenix on this. The Phoenix metro area, everybody's emails have been pretty much blanket sent to the news media for years. We're seeing that more and more now up in this region. So I don't want to belabor that anymore.
I would
but
love us to do that to our local media.
Right.
The comprehensive planning process that might give us a better reach to the public, frankly, David.
It might. So are there any other questions on open meeting law?
If we decide to change our email to what was on our agenda now,
Just let me know and let Andrea know in the back corner. We will get that updated. That's not a problem at all.
okay.
So very, very easy to do. Okay.
So doesn't that have to be in the form of a letter? You should send it in the form of a formal letter so that
Formal
it's
letter.
documented.
Yeah, you're welcome to do that, and we can keep it in our records. But right now, the mailing list that's being used is literally an email list I have created, that Andrea has created on our, basically it's a quick launch. All I do is click the button and say CPAC committee, and it gives me everybody I need, including the board administrative staff and other county staff that are, applicable in addition to this body.
But if a request is sent, the email that you currently have completely, it goes away.
Yes.
And then it's the new one.
Yeah, we're just going to swap email for email.
Yeah, I just didn't want to violate the open
Yep.
meeting law. If I
Yep.
just say word of mouth, hey, I want my email changed,
Exactly.
this and.
No, that's not a problem. Send me an email. Send me an email on it. I mean, what's going to happen is that email to me is a public record, but it's saying change it from this to this.
Okay.
It doesn't create any other new or unknown legal issues, so it's not a problem at all. Okay, comprehensive plan update, item number 8 on the agenda here. Whoops, wrong computer. So where we're at today, what brings us to today, is we started the comprehensive plan update process about 6 months ago. Staff has done a lot of work behind the scenes, quite frankly, already at this point, hundreds of hours behind the scenes, setting everything up for where we are today, putting the pieces together, building the websites. Our public participation plan has already been approved by the board. Obviously, this body is appointed, up and running. The resolution is created on that. Now, we had a community vision statement that we've also already put out to the public. And that should say it's the analysis is being done right now, not right not. But we're north of 900 responses on that survey. And we just had to make the decision last Friday to turn that survey off, because what we're finding is we're having some data integrity issues on the survey. So we've turned it off. Our GIS department is analyzing it right now to put it together, and then we're going to put that on the website here and send that out to all of the communities. But we're having some data integrity issues inside of that, so I didn't want to continue, having those problems go forward. But 900 responses across the entire county to me is absolutely incredible. I did not expect, number one, to get that number of responses, so I'm very, very thankful for that. We've held 12 community meetings so far with community groups over the last few months, all over the county. I was just in Beaver Creek last Saturday. We were in Cornville the week before that, or a few days before that. We've been in Skull Valley, Yarnell, Congress, Paulden. We're hitting everywhere. We're also working on a land use map, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, but our county GIS department is already putting together our land use map to be used for our land use discussions towards the end of the year. We're trying to identify appropriate land uses for the built environment right now on 250,000 parcels. So this is a massive undertaking. We have a contract for a consultant on the board agenda next week to discuss that and see if we can get some additional help. Timeline of events, where we're looking right now is to start off with the energy element. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but we're looking to go from the energy, the environmental, cost of development, water resources, transportation, and really the fall is where it's going to get into a lot of the meat of the discussion. To hit the transportation, the open space, the growth element, and then the land use element last, with the land use map being married to that, working through the first quarter. We're creating surveys for all of these right now. We're talking about the energy element right now. Next month, I'm going to have, I'm hoping I will have at least the next 3 in line, the environmental cost of development and water resources surveys put together, ready to go to put on our website. Energy element, as we'll talk about in a sec, is very small. I'm not worried about it. It's just a good conduit to get everything going. but we're going to start getting into the meatier topics, and I've tried to design this in such a manner that as we go through this process, our individual communities are learning more about the comprehensive plan and what these elements are and how one element impacts the other element, so that when we get all the way down to the land use, everybody has a good understanding of where we're at. From here, what I would like, my goal, is to have a approved final draft of the comprehensive plan to this body, or an approvable copy to this body in June of 22. So a little over 15 or so months. Now that really gives us a lot of time in the spring and early summer to work on what that final copy of the comprehensive plan is going to look like. That's why I'm not worried about going through multiple revisions, because we intentionally have a lot of time built into this process. Now, once this body says, yes, it looks good, go forth, we are required by state law to then send it out for a 60-day public comment period. And that's where we're going to be doing a ton of road shows. We're going to be, doing a lot of work going right back into the community to say, here's the final copy. All of the school districts, all of the jurisdictions, the First Nations, every possible entity in Yavapai County, as well as every county in the state of Arizona, will be having an opportunity to look at this and provide us those comments in that 60-day statutory requirement. Once we get through all of that and those comments come back, at that point, we're looking to go ahead and move it to the Planning Commission for their consideration in September of 22. Once the Planning Commission is good with it, the goal is to have it to the Board of Supervisors by October of 22. Now, my goal here at the end of the day is to have this done by the end of 22. As you can see, we've got several things built in here where we have time to be able to hit the pause button, stop, revisit things, and move forward. Unlike the community vision survey that we had to put a stop on, it's my intention to keep all of the other surveys online running through the whole process, so that we have a snapshot of the energy element. We'll have a snapshot of this next month. But then if something changes as we go through the process, when we get additional comments or there's something else that comes in that we take a look at it next spring and go, wait a minute, we didn't think about this. That nothing is set in stone. I want to keep those conduits of communication open through this whole process.
So
And
with
part
that
of
in
this is,
mind, question, David, about access to the vision statements from our unincorporated communities.
Yes.
Will they not have the same input on a
yes, absolutely.
regular
will.
basis then?
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, our first community vision statement is online as of yesterday, and it's from the Verde Valley Food Council. We posted that on the comprehensive plan website yesterday. They were the first ones to get us a draft document. So as part of all of this, the communities are all working on their vision statement. So that is also going to feed into a lot of the data we're going to be providing to you and a lot of the analysis we're going to be doing behind the scenes. So, and thank you for that, Supervisor Michaels. I'm focused on comp plan now. I'm at the 10,000 foot level. So thank you for that.
Understood.
Does anybody have any questions on our timeline? We've tried, as I said, we've tried to build in a lot of wiggle room in this timeline. At the end of the day, I want to emphasize too, if we don't get this done by 2022, the end of it, there's no penalty. But, I think our commitment to, the citizens needs to be, we need to hold ourselves as best we can to that timetable. But there's no set in stone. If we need a couple extra months to iron through other things, we take a couple extra months. I've said this, Supervisor Michaels has said this, the most important thing to me is that we walk away with a workable plan that protects Yavapai County and guides Yavapai County till 2032. So, yes, Connie.
Will you be using some, instead of reinventing the mousetrap, will you be using some templates that are already pretty well established for, in development, a PAD, let's say, for example? Because I think that's a big part of it. If you have the parameter established of a template that could go out to each community, then they can, kind of morph that into what they think is going to fit for them.
Absolutely. And yes, we will be working on a standardized format to an extent. I don't like our standardized format, I'll be honest. The end product that I want to be able to deliver to the board and the citizens is a fully clickable indexed document so that every word that needs a definition, every word that refers to something else, you click on it and it takes you to that section, fully interactive. I would like to have a lot of very good graphics in this because the graphics in the current one are atrocious. I want to have something that everybody can pick up, read, and genuinely understand. I don't want it to be in development speak. I want to bring it down to a level that everybody can get behind and understand it.
But are you offering this as for every municipality to establish on their own once we establish
No.
the guidelines?
No.
So you are going to be pretty much dictating what every municipality needs to in terms of the template, and then they can go about, again, morphing it into what they would like to have.
No.
So the changes.
No, the individual jurisdictions, Prescott Valley, Cottonwood, they're afforded an opportunity to review. Our document does not have any jurisdiction over them. So we do have to look at a siloed approach as we go through this. They have their own general plans that their voters speak for. Our plan cannot include their areas. So that's something we have to be distinctly different.
And I'm sorry, I cannot see the person who just spoke, or I would address her by name. I'm sorry.
It's Connie.
I wish I could
Connie
see
can
the
tell me.
placard well enough to see your name, but you make a very good point. Though we have to operate, as David described, silos with respect to our charge, I think it critically important that we understand we aren't a silo, that we are talking regionally if we're wise, that we understand that if we, for example, poke a straw in one part of the county and take the water, it affects other parts of the county.
Well, that's
What
exactly
doesn't
what my
matter
point
what
was.
the subject matter or the element in this case of the plan we're talking about, they're all inextricably intertwined. And so I think hearing their voice, understanding what their plan says, at least in an executive summary form, is really important. And so thank you for bringing that up, because I've been
having just
concerned about that,
visited
and I've
some of
heard
those
comment
communities.
from other municipalities, leadership, that sometimes they feel left out. And while they do get to comment, they're not part of this updating process in the sense of the word of scribing the document. But I think we'd be wise to include an understanding and a reflection of that understanding in our final document of what their community's vision for themselves or plan for themselves is and how it relates to the overall comprehensive plan.
Well, and I agree with that, but when you're comparing, for example, having just visited Kirkland to the overall, how do you, the diversity, every community has their own vision, which obviously we will have at our access. But when you are developing an area that, again, would be, and I'm just going to use this as an example, of what we call a PAD, it's a planned area development. It isn't the same for every community, and it isn't going to be the same. So I get a little concerned with the mandating of these, these certain planning commissions, because they're all so diverse and so different. So how we have it roughly till 2022 in the fall. How do you take every single community, this board, and make sure that we honor their requests, but we also have to have some kind of an overall, which can be overreaching plan. So I think we have to be very cautious in.
You have to be mindful, absolutely, and you're absolutely right on target again in
Connie,
saying essentially that each community, unincorporated or otherwise, is unique unto itself, and they would say that, and we should be respectful of that as we go forward with a planning document that includes the entire county, that is the entire county. And so that's the work that's before us, to be sensitive, to recognize, and to balance, and that's the task ahead.
And it is, and I apologize, Connie, because I wasn't quite following your initial statement on that. I was looking at it in a different context. We are working with communities across the county, trying to get them involved to create these community vision statements so that we can have them identify what their individual needs are. Now, I have intentionally set us in the middle of the road so that the community vision statements can start off, and they can just be, they want to talk about 3 elements out of the 8, and which is great. We need that voice back from the community. but we've also set it up in such a way where these vision statements, if communities really desire, can be grown into larger community plans that can be considered or added as appendix documents. But right now, a big part we're trying to do is get engagement. As I said, I've got a few communities across the county which are doing great. They're engaging, they're writing as we speak, and then I got others that I'm trying to get a spark under them just to put some people together to put a few pages of something down. So we're trying to collect all that information, and that will also feed into all of this to try to get those individual communities.
And the lack of engagement, I'm sure David would confirm, and I know that Supervisor Oberg has shown the example to the contrary, often has to do with a citizenry who has not felt a full engagement. And so it's up to us to engage them, to invite them, to encourage them. And I think we're seeing that in some of the processes that we're engaged in now with voices that really haven't come to the table before. I know in Supervisor Oberg's district that's the case, and I'm sure it's going to be the case in others. The better we are able to let folks know that this is their community, that they have a right to create their own sense of place, and that our comprehensive plan should reflect that right in its narrative. And so that is a really important point. The more we can engage others who haven't been engaged before. And so I look to myself when I hear David saying, you know, they just haven't responded. It's my job to go out there and talk to them, just as Supervisor Oberg has been doing, to invite them, to encourage them, to help them want to be a part of something that is going to describe not only who they are now, but well into the future and perhaps even their children's future. So you make a very good point. This is an evolutionary process, and the better we are able at engaging a wider, a broader constituency, the better product we will end up having.
But you know, that is, if you really drill down to what the end result of this comprehensive committee is going to be, just having again visited several of the different little communities around town, when they see David and us walk in, their first reaction is to pull back. Oh my God, what are you going to make me do now? What do we have to do? I think the county would do well to develop, if it's just a mini marketing campaign, it should be, because I don't think it's been clear enough for why we're here, what we want to do, what is the end result. You know, and as a builder, 40 years in the development business, it's very vague. I felt for in fact, the young builder in Yarnell. Like, remember him? He wanted to do some, you know, workforce housing, and he was not clear as far as the county goes and what he can do, where he can do it, how long it's going to take, what codes he's going to have to comply with. I mean, this is so far reaching. I think that is very ambitious to think that we can actually handle anything with any great consequence within a year. In terms of the detail of it, you know, if we have an overview of, you know, zoning areas, that's one thing, but I do fear that the communities are fearful. They are, because I know now after, you know, participating in several of these meetings. And I do think that the campaign, you should think possibly about doing a little bit of you know, some kind of a little marketing, you know, hire an agency maybe, because the feeling between the communities and the county is not good. Yeah. Particularly if you're a developer or a homeowner. Let's say a homeowner has a 5-acre parcel. I've been in contact with one of the people in the community down there, and he wanted to build, I think he wants the community to have a new church. And I'm sure, I think you were probably in charge with him or in contact with him also. But, you know, again, just the red tape of trying to find a piece of property that he can build a church has been daunting for him. I mean, he's an elderly man. And so there's got to be some kind of a vessel where, I don't know if this group is the correct group to do it, but when you come into a community and say, okay, we're going to have a comprehensive plan for you, I'm surprised they're not all running to the hills. It's, you know, and I think they were there out of curiosity. They want to know. But when the people that are going to be the spokespeople for these communities start to have a better understanding of why we're there, I think we better be prepared to figure out or provide a way to be able to, you know, honor what they want without bringing all the, you know, the zoning requirements, the code requirements, the, you know, the dark sky, because it's daunting for a lot of those smaller communities.
Yeah, it is.
So I would just caution you to keep, you know, keep those smaller areas in scope or in scale. Scope is the wrong word. In scale with who they are. Kirkland is small. We can't come in there with a 6-inch book of codes and zoning to throw in Kirkland. It's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. So I think we have to be aware of that. And meeting these communities was an eye-opener for me. I mean, Yarnell is a place I just passed through. But, you know, but getting there and actually seeing the people, in many ways, it's a time warp. You know, you're walking back into 1957. And I know you have the pressure of trying to get this comprehensive plan, but I think it's a cautionary tale for all of us on the committee to really take seriously what the vision statements are. Yeah. And if the county needs to back off a little bit on some of these requirements, I think we need to be open-minded enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, and you are talking a couple different things. You are talking
no, I agree.
Comp plan and codes is a whole different discussion.
Right.
But, you know, to your point, up until, November, I think, October, November, December, right in that range, holidays. Up until that point, the county had an issued moratorium on any community planning, on any vision type statements, anything else. And that was the tone set for everybody going back almost 12 years. And that was the problem, is the department has had to work under this mantra so long of saying, we can't recognize, we don't want it, you can't do that. And now, thankfully, the board agreed with me and said, let's get rid of this. You know, this is a hindrance to this. Now we have to change 180 degrees and come back in and somehow build credibility again. So, you know, to your point, you're right on point, trust me. And it's the small communities I worry about most. The big communities.
Dave, Mary has a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish what you're going to say, Dave, because I would like to bring up a process issue related to all of this.
Okay.
Well, and how.
Go ahead with that. Go ahead with that.
Okay. Because I'm working sort of, in a sense, with all three of the entities over in the Verde Valley and have taken sort of a lead in making sure that information is exchanged, et cetera, because some of them, and I know you've met with them, Dave, thank you very much. But I'm wondering about process, and I'm going to use a specific example because I don't know how else to address this. I live over in the Beaver Creek community, and they have opened it up to allow volunteers to be on, you know, the separate components. But the Beaver Creek Community Association has decided that their board is writing the plan. I think we as a group, as a process, need to say that's too closed. I mean, I think we need, and I have to use an example because it makes sense to me, that we, from an advisory committee or from yourself, Dave, need to put out some parameters as to who should be invited, that having a closed group is maybe not the best way to invite engagement and investment in the process. And maybe I'm wrong on that, and I'm happy to, you know, for you to say that to me, but that concerns me when there's already a board that's decided they're writing the full plan and they're not inviting others on that group.
Are they taking public input, though? Are they writing that information down and including it?
Well, I'm not sure about the whole process.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a question.
The other two, Cornville and Beaver and the Village Oak Creek Big Park, have already done surveys. I know that they've met over there. But again, I don't know if these issues are happening, you know, in the Prescott area or not. But are we giving some guidance of saying, this is our recommendation as to how your process should move forward to get the most engagement, to invite people to participate? That's just my concern.
And to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
We have already been doing that. We can't, obviously, at the end of the day, I can't control what these individual community groups are going to do. But what we can control is the requirements when these plans come in. And the plan itself, I'm not as worried about. In your case, what you're mentioning is what I'm requiring is the appendix documents. which is what did they do for outreach? Who did they engage? What were the raw comments? That is, I have been beating that drum left and right because that's at least a mechanism that I can get that holds them to a higher standard so that they are at least engaging, or if they're not, you can take that into account in your deliberations over that plan. But that we at least have that extra appendix document of the public outreach and everything that was done to help vet the validity of that outreach. So
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
yes, I met with Beaver Creek, the water resource group, on Saturday and had that same discussion with them.
Thanks, Dave.
You bet, you bet. Is there anything else on the update before we jump into the energy element here? No? Okay. So item number 9, and as I said, what I'm asking for today is, are these questions good? Do we need to add anything else? If you give me a green light, we're going to have this probably on the website by, I think, Monday at the latest. We've already got it pretty much roughed out in the background, but state law, and everybody's going to really learn this. 11804, you get to all learn the whole aspect of, what this is going to mean over the next year. But 11804, section 4, this is all state law says when it comes to the energy element. And the energy element is something that triggered when we went over 125,000 people. Very, very basic, but it encourages and provides, that we need a plan that encourages and provides incentives for efficient use of energy. Now, right off the bat, there's a word in there that I don't like, and the Goldwater Institute and my lawyers don't like, and that is incentives. That is a very problematic word. We cannot gift public resources to things. We cannot, provide gifts. There's gifting statutes. So we're already kind of running afoul a little bit, but that's the language. And then we also need to identify policies and practices for greater use of renewable energy. So right now, our current plan has goals and objectives. I'm not even going to get into the text. I want to just get into kind of the meat since we're talking only about questions. But the goal is to, again, to encourage and provide incentives for efficient use of energy, to identify policies and practices for the greater use of renewable energy, and encourage education of the public regarding renewable. So really we have the two state law provisions as goal 1 and 2, and then we've thrown in, when they wrote this, an educational component on this. And quite frankly, we really have not been doing this at all. This is part of the old plan. Moving forward, I really want to engage. I want the direction that if we say education, then by goodness, we're out doing education. We're providing this information to everybody. As far as the objectives, identify areas conducive to large-scale renewable. The board just voted on one recently on Fain Ranch over by the mine. Encourage creation of criteria to minimize potential impacts of a large-scale facility. This isn't on the radar for most people yet. There is a 5,000-acre solar facility coming in the I-17 and Orem area. I think you probably got an invite to, for a meet and greet. I know Donna did. Some of the others. Right now, it's still at a sales pitch, by the way. So, but we're going to have these coming in. I mean, there's a lot of desire to have large scale. So criteria like that, I think, makes sense. Formulation of a volunteer renewable energy group to formulate ideas. Again, we have no energy group. We have no, advisory committee for this. We have nothing. So when we look at the way it was written before, I really want to look to the future. If we're going to create a committee, let's create one committee to provide comments on different things. Let's get the education. Let's do these things that we're not doing right now. So,
David, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
Going back to under purpose for the energy element, I note that the word dust is not in there. In the second page where it speaks to key items we will need to be addressed, such as noise, visual aesthetics, water usage, protection of sensitive areas, and energy storage. It would seem to me that adding the word dust after the word noise would be incumbent upon us. Very well what's going on over in my neck of the woods, where outside of the Sedona area, it is being loved to death. Trees are already dead. Vegetation is already dead, increasing fire hazard, of course, because our ordinances are silent to dust. And so I think we need to begin incorporating that language.
Yes.
There's a price to pay, a consequence that's lethal if we don't manage dust. And there are other, Maricopa County has such in their language. And so I don't know where the proper place nor the timing, or whether we're just reviewing this in a general sort of way. But there's probably a lot of other things that could be added, I'm sure.
Yes.
But I think the word dust is really important.
I agree completely. I agree completely. And today is just a general overview as we lead into the questions. Connie, you had a question or
I
thought?
think we have a state statute on dust. I think it's ARS 310, if I'm not mistaken, where every single construction site is required to have dust control. It's a matter of enforcing it. And we get fined. If I build and I disturb a certain percentage of the desert and I don't have dust control on that property during the development from start to finish, we are fined as a developer. So it's a matter of enforcement.
You're absolutely right. But this is visitor usage of vehicles going down Forest Service roads. And there's such density now of the traffic that dust hangs in the air. So it's not just specific to the construction. And yes, you're right, that does.
And the dust, Connie, you're speaking to, that state statute, is for the non-attainment areas.
Right.
And Yavapai County is not a non-attainment area. Maricopa County is. So Maricopa County does have a dust control, as part of, I don't know if it's code enforcement or their environmental unit, but yes, they do have that. Our ordinance only addresses dust if the dust is excessive and outside of the normal operation and use of the land. We issue a construction permit, dust would be expected. I've got a complaint right now in Beaver Creek, or Rimrock. We're dealing with that right now. But I agree, dust is something that we need to have some bigger teeth on to address.
More clarification and enforcement.
Well, in this situation, that would actually go back on the county. And there are mitigation. There is mitigation that the county can do in terms of a soluble oil that they can treat those roads. But, again, you've got to have the stomach to be able to enforce it, and you've got to have a vessel to pay for it.
Well, in this case, the one Supervisor Michaels is speaking of is actually forest. which throws a whole nother problem. Throws a whole nother problem into the mix. We've got the same thing occurring right now in Maricopa County, just over the line in Black Canyon City, one lot in the Maricopa, and it's a BLM land. And all the ATVs are doing the same thing down there, loving it to death. And I actually facilitated a call about a month ago between all of the agencies. So we figured out it wasn't us, it was them. But we all gave BLM very clear direction. You got to act in the right manner. You got to address this, because right there it's so bad. Daisy Mountain Fire keeps getting fires called in on it. Their DPS has had accidents there. Someone's going to get hurt.
Well, it's so bad. I come back and forth to Phoenix a few days a week myself, and it's so bad on the weekends going through Black Canyon City.
It's atrocious.
That it looks like smoke.
Yes.
With the company, and I know the company that's actually doing it right now. And I was wondering about that, because it's so close to the freeway. It is a problem. And again, Daisy Mountain, my son's a firefighter at Daisy Mountain. They get calls all the time because they're not being, it's out of control.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I can tell you, Maricopa County and us pointed very squarely right to BLM and said, you need to solve this.
Yeah.
Maricopa County didn't give them any wiggle room, and I wasn't overly nice to them either, so.
Well, I will invite your help with Forest Service roads, David. Of course,
I will always give it my best. So, but I'll include language in there, because I think that's an important comment to carry through. So as we move forward, we go from goals, objectives to then recommendations in the comprehensive plan. So, recommendations encourage a dialogue, continue to encourage preservation of wildlife corridors. Those were specifically brought up very much in the Fain case. Encourage development of renewable that are not water intensive. That's always positive. Encourage on-site renewable infrastructure as part of the technological design for public and private facilities. streamlined permitting process with pre-engineered plans for renewable energy products. Now, this is one I will say, we already do for residential on-grid solar. We completely got out of that business. We handed off to APS because APS was already at the table going through and doing permitting on top of our permitting. We just said, APS, this is yours. So we streamlined that whole process to help get people renewable energy, solar and stuff on their homes, trying to make that as easy as possible. As we go forward here, so I've crafted, I think, 14 or 15 questions here, and you know, if everybody's good with it, we'd like to go forward, but I can walk through each one of these, or we can kind of talk about them in bulk, whatever everybody would like. Mr. Peterson?
Dave, even before the specific questions, I have a concern in the introduction comments. In the center of it, it says, due to the growing concern over the environmental degradation caused by fossil fuels. I'm concerned about the county stating that in a questionnaire. I mean,
well, and I want to be clear. This is not the questionnaire that's going to be published. Okay, this is just a simple staff report memo. What is going to be published is what we have on the questions. I'm providing a little bit of background as far as this is the energy element, this is the state law. Here is the current energy element as a link, and then just those questions.
Okay.
So we're not making a public, other than this report, we're not making a public position on fossil fuels at all. But we are going to get into a question that's not too far off of there.
Okay. And then going to the specific questions, on the second item, I'm concerned what we mean by promote. Does that mean money?
That could mean a lot of things. I'm not taking it as money. I'm taking it more as encouragement, more as policy statements that Yavapai County should have, renewable energy based on what the responses on that question would be. I would look at that more as a policy statement than a dollars and cents type of a statement, but we can certainly reword that.
Do you think that would be clear to someone taking?
Probably not. If you're asking it, I think it's probably something we need to rework.
I'm asking it in a couple questions, actually, in a couple of items, because later on we go to the question of, do you want to have electric stations replacing parking spots? Well, who's going to pay for the stations? Where are they going to be located? Are they going to be public stations, or are they going to be allowed on private lots where the company or the business would like to provide those? So, and
to that point, though, and we'll, just to plant the seed so everybody knows what my thought process on that one was to
Dave,
look
Mary
at
comment on this one too.
Okay, let me go ahead and I'll make my statement, and then we'll go to the next one. My thought process on that was to look at a change in the actual parking regulations to say that, if you have, say, 25 spaces or more, then you must provide one electric charging station on that, to create basically a formula, just like we do a handicap parking space, but to help then put the onus back on the business to build in this infrastructure for the future. That was the intent behind it.
But why would you require that when a business, if they felt that was a benefit to them, would provide it at their own cost, as opposed to the county mandating it, which to me I think is a little onerous?
Okay. Well, let me ask it in a different way then. So this was the other way I was thinking about it, is should we, and I'm thinking out loud here, so should we look at an incentive for a reduction in required parking, perhaps a 10% reduction in required parking, provided they put in X number of charging stations, perhaps?
Why would you do that? You still need the same number of car spaces. I just think, Dave.
No, I like this, Jim, so thank you.
From this perspective on energy, I think if it's good for the public and it's good for the company, they'll work it out. I don't see why the county should require it or pay for it.
Well, I don't believe we should pay for it at all.
Okay.
I'll be real upfront about that. But
is a better word advocate for?
I think maybe advocate would be a better word on that case. And what was the other comment over in the Verde, Supervisor Michaels?
Mary
Was,
has one.
Well, I was
John or
just going
Mary?
to
Okay.
ask a favor. If, Dave, maybe we could go through all of the questions in chronological order and address them one at a time. I know personally I have comments on a few of the questions instead of jumping around. What do you think?
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. So let's go ahead and start off with number one.
This is John Black. I had some comments I wanted to make. Taking surveys there are people who spend their entire professional lives developing surveys. They're very experienced and they produce very productive surveys. I applaud you for producing a rough draft for us to work from. I don't believe this survey is ready to be put online. I got it 2 days ago. I've had a chance to look through it. I've reviewed it. I've got some comments on it. But to say we're going to put it online next week, I mean, we can go through the individual questions and stuff. But first of all, most professional surveys are done with statements. For example, the county should do such and such. How much do you agree with that on a scale of 1 to 5? Or maybe you need more information, okay? So that structure for a survey is much more productive than asking a question. In many cases, you've got questions here that ask 3 questions in one, and let's say, are you in favor of encouraging wind power? Are you in favor of encouraging solar power, renewable power? Well, I may be opposed to wind, but I'm in favor of solar. So how do I answer that question? And a professional survey taker will tell you, break that down and let them speak on each issue individually. So like I say, I applaud you for putting forth the effort to get this ball rolling, but I think we're rushing it to say, you know, after 2 days of the committee reviewing it, let's put it online. I mean, one question I ran into here, it says, do you feel there are adequate charging stations in Yavapai County to accommodate the demand for electrical vehicles in the future? Well, I mean, everyone knows that the number of electrical vehicles is going to be increasing. So the current number of charging stations is most certainly not going to be adequate for future needs. So the answer to that question really doesn't serve any purpose. And I would encourage you to do what you did before when you put out your previous list of survey questions as kind of a straw man or a rough draft. I was amazed, and I think probably you were too, at how many people jumped on that. We even had a fellow who was a professional review it and make changes to it. And that's the survey that you've been using online and have gotten such a phenomenal response to. People will fill out, you're asking them to take their time to fill out your survey, take the time out of their day to do that. If they feel it's productive, they'll do it. And if you put out a second survey, they'll come and do it again. If they don't feel like what you're asking is productive or useful for their time, they won't come back again, and you'll lose that really valuable resource.
And
so
we're
I'm
very lucky
encouraging
to
us
have.
just slow it down and let's go through the process a little more deliberately.
Well, we're very lucky to have a professional research methodologist who makes a living at designing survey instruments and questionnaires. So maybe letting that person have a run at it on a volunteer basis, which is what he's been doing, might be useful for you, David.
Instead of just presenting this to us and saying, should we go forward with it, maybe you should use the same procedure you used with the previous survey, which I think was very productive.
Okay. I can certainly go ahead and pull it back and, push it out in that manner to have it looked at and take a look at it again. We can bring it back as a voting item at the next meeting then. It will delay a month, the energy element and everything moving forward, but I've got no objection to that. So. Mm-hmm. Yes, Con?
I agree with Jim Peterson here also. I mean, if I'm going down these questions number 1, should Yavapai County implement? Question number 2, should Yavapai County promote? Should Yavapai County encourage? I like encourage because when you implement, that means you now implement and you have a rule. Mm-hmm. And remember, as Jim brought up, everything you're proposing is going to cost somebody, and generally it's the taxpayer. I'm for less regulation in this area, not more regulation. All of these, geothermal, wind, solar, it's fairly, I mean, I know it's been around a while, but it's still fairly new. And there's all kinds of science that says, for example, the geothermal, that would not be a good fit for Arizona. The amount of water consumption that it takes to run a geothermal plant. I actually did some research last night on geothermal, and for just the energy, it takes between 1,700 and 4,000 gallons of water for 1 megawatt. So why would that be a good fit for us along the Verde River? It wouldn't be. Solar would be perfect. We've got sun. The wind, again, didn't we just learn a lesson in Texas, especially in the northern Arizona? You know, I think this is a little premature. I'm very hesitant as to why Yavapai County feels like it has to step into, you know, the bright and shiny object, which is energy, energy, energy. If this is coming out of Phoenix, I believe it was part of the energy codes that were brought forth in the Obama-Biden presidency. I know I just sat on a committee. I'm on the appeals board in the city of Prescott. We had parts of this 11804 that we had to implement, and I didn't you know that, some of the code changes. I'm a cost analysis person in my own construction company, and I did a brief cost analysis of those code changes, which were part of 11804, and it added between $17,000 and $20,000 per unit. And when I say unit, I'm talking about on the top of a 25,000 to 3,000 square foot house. If you start to mandate now more energy compliant pieces to the building, you've got to remember us striving for workforce housing and affordable housing is never going to happen if you adopt a lot of these things. So encouraging, promoting, fine with it. Mandating, implementing, I'm not fine with that. I mean, again, it's something that, yes, it's in the forefront of everything you read and see today, and we do need it. I am not at all arguing that. But for example, again, as an arbitrator for the ROC, many of my cases were against solar companies that were installing solar panels on, you know, $1 million homes in, let's say, Paradise Valley or Scottsdale. The damage to the roofing product and the underlayment is a claim at the ROC. It's a defect claim. And, you know, we're so on the verge, if you keep up with the science of solar, to having a solar cell the size of a can light that could power a 3,000 square foot house. So this might be a little bit premature for the county to come in and start mandating this. I think educating people, letting them choose, you know, what's appropriate for your neighborhood, for your county or your city where you live, taking into concern the weather. Prescott here, you know, one of my big arguments with this, the energy proponent of the 11804 was the outside air for the air conditioning unit, which adds on a couple $1,000s per unit. We don't need that up here. We're not in an enclosed building like we are down in Phoenix. Yeah. So some of this has to be a common sense approach. Well, I don't believe that Yavapai County has to start mandating anything where energy is concerned, but you know, that's just my opinion coming from a very, very regulated industry.
Well, and kind of to that point though, what we've got is, I'm hearing a mixture of building code in the cities. 804 is policy. It's related to the comprehensive plan. This is not a regulatory document.
No, but it will become that.
Well, it could become that.
It will,
and that's going to depend on elected officials and everything else, should the desire be to move in that direction. I hear exactly what you're saying, and this is the discussion I wanted to have, truly, is to get everybody's thoughts and opinions on this, because this is what's going to help guide this.
David, you have a comment over here on that.
Well, guiding is fine. I mean, I'm all for guidance and education, but mandating, I'm not for that at all.
Okay, well, and I don't see anything in here, I'm not interpreting anything in here as mandate.
Well, if we're talking about just the verbiage, in question number 1, in relation to the energy element, should Yavapai County implement? The definition of implement is exactly what it is. So change that word to promote and encourage.
I've already got the language. Okay. I've already made that note, so.
Okay.
Mary, go ahead. You had a question?
Thanks, and I was just going to speak to what you were saying, Dave. I like, in a sense, question 1, but I think the county should be, maybe it's develop recommended standards. I mean, so that we're looking across the county and we have some standards, so not everybody's doing their own thing, and it puts a process in place. I've also addressed through some of the others, the way it's phrased could be prohibitive, cost-wise and all that. And our developers, there's some real issues, and Connie addressed those beautifully. But I think the questions of themselves and we're trying to get at are really good. I think they just need to be worded a little differently, and as John said, broken out some so that they're singular, you know, more statement-wise. because I think some of them even, and I believe it was Jim who addressed, the parking spaces, and we have an example of 1-for-1. That's going to drive people to make a decision that I don't think we want them to make. We want to ask the question, should there be more? Should we look at a percentage in parking lots, something like that? But all of a sudden you say 1-to-1. I come from a premise saying, well, that means we're losing 50% of the parking spaces for non-electric cars. Well, when are we going to get there? And truthfully, from my perspective, that again is a pushback against low income who may not be able to afford electric cars and some of those kinds of things. So I think we need to be very careful in getting the answers that we want and getting the information, because if we ask everybody, to go back to the first one, should the county have standards? And you get a lot of people in the county area saying yes, that then is a direction to say, let's start talking about what those standards are. Again, challenging for you, I agree, but you have a county that says we want them. Am I making sense on that, Dave?
Yes, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and take these back to the drawing board, and we can bring them forward here next month for consideration. Are there any other? I think that was John. Go ahead.
You're going to go back and review it and so forth. Can we send you suggestions on things we would like to see changed and what those changes would be? Send those to your staff for inclusion?
Yes, as long as it comes only to me.
Provide more detail to you.
Yes, as long as it only comes to me, that's not a problem at all.
That'd be great.
Okay, that's great.
And you might, at this juncture, want to, as you have before, engage this volunteer who's been part of the design and development of the last instrument. No reason not to engage him if he's willing to work with you, so he can maybe expedite your effort for you, David.
Yes. And I'll get with John on his contact info. Any other thoughts or questions on this?
Well, I think the one thing I'd like to say, and this is Harry Oberg, Supervisor for District 1. I know out in my area, very rural, a lot of cattle ranching, things of that nature, mining. I don't think they're really interested in renewables. I think what they're looking at primarily is, do I want to bring in a wind farm or do I want to bring in a solar farm in my area? Aesthetically, what does that look like? Is that something that, I want to have in my, in my neighborhood? So I think we need to make sure that we're not trying to push this all toward renewables. I think we need to, talk about a wide range of thoughts on how we might want to look at energy in the future, and don't just keep it totally on renewables. Because I can tell you out in the rural areas, it's not going to sell very good.
Fantastic. I will include that in there. Thank you. Any other comments on this? No. Seeing and hearing none, let's go ahead and move on. So other business, I've got on here item number 1, just upcoming items of interest. I don't have anything at the moment, but that's just going to be a standard placeholder on the agenda. And then I'd like to go ahead and turn it over as a roundtable for anybody, if anybody wants to add anything, talk about anything that we didn't talk about already. I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments. Why don't we start in Missouri? Supervisor Michaels, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, it's clear that we are a board who is committed, or a committee rather, who's committed to making sure that we have a quality plan that can help, on the one hand, protect, on the other hand, lead us into a safe, regenerative, sustainable, and balanced, as Supervisor Oberg was indicating, document. I would only say to you, from my perspective, we also need to be thinking about that term indexed versus adopt. It's my personal opinion right now that community plans and vision statements are so integral to decision making as it relates to the guiding document, the county plan, that they warrant adoption rather than a mere index. That doesn't mean that the questionnaires and all of the exhibits, if you will, should be adopted. They could be indexed. But I think, we're asking a lot of our communities, we're asking a lot of the county, and I think an important variable in this decision-making equation of do we recommend or do we deny each application that comes before us, having a community plan or a vision statement adopted and understood as part of the comprehensive plan is integral for us to go forward with consensus and collaboration rather than not understanding what the expectation is or what a community is really all about.
Yes.
And so that's just a thought that I have for consideration.
I agree. Mary, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Okay. Yeah, I was going to make a suggestion, and I know this is going to put more work on you, Dave, but I know, I hate to do that because I get it, but it's fun to ask someone else to do something for a change instead of it being the other way around. I know here in the Verde Valley, I know 2 of our communities have developed actually some great surveys that they're using for their own communities. I have a feeling the same kind of wisdom is coming out across the county. Is there any way that we could put on the website for the county plan these resource documents that, the different communities are developing for plans? I mean, to me, copying and stealing is great. That's why I sent an email to the 3, entities in the Verde Valley, and I know they've all met. Why not share what processes others are using?
Yes.
And I don't know if that's possible, but it seems like a great idea.
Yeah. I have already designed the website around that model. They just need to send me the information. We're happy to put it up. If they can also let us know when the meetings are, when their individual little community meetings are, we will publish those on the website as well. So I've already set it up there. We've already got the Verde Valley Food Council plan up. Whatever they can send me, I want a website, the Planning 2032, I want that website to be a good aggregate of everything. So have them send it to me.
Okay, so you want me to communicate with all of them, or are you going to just send an email out to the lead of all the groups too, asking for like info? What's your preference?
If you want to communicate directly with them and have them send that in to me, that would be great.
Okay.
The other thing I'll say is any of their surveys, anything else that they put out, let me know, and we will put that out on our comprehensive plan mailing list as well. I just did it for Cornville last week. So any of those that come in, let me know, and we'll publish it on our email list and our website as well.
Will do. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. John, how about you? Any comments?
Well, I was just going to comment that we talked briefly before about the possibility of sending comments to you and your staff from the committee members, and you said it was okay as long as it came directly to you and not to the committee.
Yes.
I think that provides us with a workable way to work in more detailed changes and additions and so forth. So I'm more comfortable with that.
Yes, and I'm fine doing that. What I cannot do and I won't do is transmit that back out to everybody until we get into an agendized meeting. That's the hard line.
Completely.
You can send me all the comments you want. That's not a problem, but I just can't go the other way with it.
And then you'll take and even coalesce them. If you're asking all of us or giving us the opportunity to put back comments on the energy one, you'll take all of the comments you get back from the committee and put it into a document and send it to us, right? So that we can then...
It will be sent out as part of your packet, yes.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Uh-huh. And our goal, by the way, our goal is that everybody, I was running behind because I got a million other things to do, but our goal is that the packets will be emailed out to everybody 1 week in advance of the meeting. And that's the standard we use for the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment and all of our other bodies. So that's our goal. I know I was a little late on the energy element and stuff. That's our goal moving forward, is that 1 week is, when everything will be transmitted. So. Okay. Supervisor Oberg, what would you like to add?
Yes, maybe I missed it here. Is there any time period in which you want to get the initial draft vision statements from the communities?
I had originally told the communities April, and I have pulled back on that because a lot of them, we've got some of them that jumped right up and said, yes, we'll do this. And then I've got a lot of them that are just having a hard time getting that spark going. So I've kind of removed the time frame on that and just said, get me what you can. And then, again, if they need help, we'll come down and help them. We'll do whatever we can. But I'm not putting a hard timeline on it like we were originally planning to do. So whatever we can get, whenever we can get it, will still be very valuable.
I understand they could possibly change their vision too, as you work through these various elements and they hear more information, they get educated on them.
Absolutely.
They might decide to change it too, but I think I'd like to see a, pretty much initial drafts maybe in the next 90 days from everybody if we can possibly do it.
That would be great. And I can put the word out to try to get, people up at the table to do that. As I said, April was our original date because I really wanted to have those together when we started aggregating some data, but it just isn't working, unfortunately. Go ahead, Connie. Okay. You raise your hand. We'll go next with you. Ladies next.
Is it okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I request that everybody on the board get a copy of the the statute?
Yes,
ARS
happy to.
11804.
ARS 11804.
I think I have read the statute. It is long, but I think it's very, very important for everybody to understand how this came about.
Yes.
What the end result is going to be and how are we going to get there.
I agree.
Because there's a lot of little traps to fall in this. When the state takes money from the U.S. government or the county, you have a rope tied to you, and you have to perform in a certain way in order to substantiate that you take that money. And, that they dangle the carrot in front of us, and many municipalities just take it because it's free money, they think. But what happens is the money doesn't end up being free.
Yeah.
And then the residents and the taxpayer ends up having to pay ultimately.
Right. Prescott saw that with the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But I would like everybody to have a good working knowledge of that statute.
I would be happy to send it out to you.
Yeah, so we don't fall into those traps.
Yes,
as a
I'd be
county.
happy to. And quite frankly, one of the things we can do here as well, we already do this for the Planning Commission. We've already got a kind of a note card set up for different things. We can go through and try to create the same kind of laminated note card for everybody that has 11804 in its entirety on a laminated sheet that's available at every meeting.
Was that the outline for the comprehensive?
Yes, 11804 is the outline for the comprehensive plan, and that's part of Growing Smarter 1 and then Growing Smarter 2 in the 90s.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of this, not to beat up the state to the west, but a lot of this came out of, Oregon, California, out of their other proposition that they had over there. It just kept working its way east. And this is kind of where we're at. So.
Well, and see, that's the fear, having, had to deal with this before,
yes.
Is, again, we've got to have this invisible rope tied to this to perform, because, obviously the state took the money, the government money, but we have to be very cognizant of what applies to us in Yavapai County.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So to be able, I know you've probably got the pressure to fill every single one of these requirements, and obviously.
Genuinely, and I want to address it, genuinely, other than the workload, I don't feel that I'm under a gun from my bosses. I feel that my bosses want the best possible product for Yavapai County. And, I don't feel that I'm under a gun or this committee is under a gun to perform by a set date. I think we need to put our best foot forward, good faith, try to get as much community involvement, but I don't feel that pressure. And I think that's an important distinction from my seat. I want to make sure this is done right.
But I also think that the board and the community needs to understand that it's okay to say no.
Yes, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. In most areas, it's okay to say no.
Right.
There are some areas, as we get into the 804, where we have to look at options. We have to provide a land use map that addresses residential, commercial, employment. There's some areas in there we have to say yes to, but they're far and few between. And, there's a lot of wiggle room between here and there, so.
Thank you.
You bet. Commissioner Knopf?
Nothing else to add, thank you.
Nothing? Okay. Mr. Peterson?
Dave, I haven't looked at the online information that you're providing to the public, but to address one of Connie's concerns about we don't want the public to feel like this is going to be onerous, but it's going to be it's going to help a benefit to them.
Yes.
And maybe in the opening paragraph of your online item, you could state that somewhat clearly, that we're trying to create this which will guide the public and make it more efficient and easier for them to accomplish what they would like to accomplish, given the input from all the communities.
To protect their desires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that has not been what I think the takeaway has been in a couple of the meetings.
Yeah.
At all. And you could tell.
Yeah.
Especially in the Kirkland group. They were very defensive, let's put it there. And I think that probably before we walk in the room or even walk in this, I think maybe the first sentence ought to be, to protect your desires for your community, we are going to attempt to, to have a plan for you.
Yeah.
And make it about them, because it shouldn't be a fearful event, because, you're kind of big brother.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And,
absolutely, yeah. And that's the tough part is, we play so many different roles here. I've got this role where we're genuinely trying to get everybody's, comment, but in the same sense, I also have to be the hammer when we have violations, when we have safety issues. And, it's tough finding that balance sometimes, to be the good guy and the bad guy at the same time.
well, health and safety are the two top things that the county should be concerned with,
Yeah.
period.
Per our state charter, that is the mandate.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so, sounds good. Vinny, what comments do you have?
No comments. Looking forward to the process, working with everyone.
Thank you. Sandra?
I'm learning a lot.
You're learning a lot. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I do have one concern. Are you getting cooperation from the town of Prescott Valley for input?
Well, right now, the town of Prescott Valley is not part of this process. As I stated earlier, the towns have their own plans. There is hard jurisdiction lines that exist. Right. So Prescott Valley, at this point, does not have a seat at the table.
Okay, but are you getting anything from Prescott Valley?
What I am getting, and I think you sent it out, and I think my mom sent it out. We are getting a lot of responses from the residents of Prescott Valley. And that's an important distinction I want to make, is that the jurisdiction of Prescott Valley is not a party to this document. This is a Yavapai County document. The residents of Prescott Valley absolutely have a voice. And that's a voice. They are county residents, even though it does not apply to the land they may live on, it does apply to the county they live in. And that's an important distinction.
Well, and we're having instances right now where we're annexing county land into Prescott Valley.
Yes.
And when you're looking at the county zoning, and then you look at the zoning that they want, they have to be compatible with what the residents want.
Yes, they do.
And so it's very important, I think, that the residents understand this and participate, because now they're screaming about, we annexed this and now you're going to do this with it.
Yes.
And they feel like they have nothing to say about it after the fact.
I can tell you, when we get especially to the land use map and the growth areas element of the comprehensive plan, there's a lot of Prescott Valley especially that is in the county that is undesignated in their plan, because their plan jumps out. And we are already talking to the landowner out there to talk about planning it. Good. That, Prescott Valley said they wanted it undesignated. Well, Prescott Valley, in my mind, made a poor choice, but we're going to be obligated to come in and say, okay, it's time to identify the land uses. How should this be built out now? And have those discussions, especially with that landowner out there, to go through and build a plan that's going to work. But that is a failure on Prescott Valley's part. I would not have left an area in my community undesignated.
I agree.
And it created some issues on the solar project. But that was their plan. So that was what they chose, and that was what their voters chose at the time too, unfortunately.
Right, but if you're going to market to these communities, these particularly, I believe, Prescott Valley, the residents need to know that these are the issues that are going to be forthcoming, and we're trying to give you a plan to work from.
Yes.
Because your community did not do it.
Yes. Oh, and when we get to that point, I can guarantee we're going to be having those discussions. I'm trying to get that landowner out there especially to start working with, Legend Hills, and you know, the whole area out there, trying to put together a group that can help try to create either a community plan or come up with some type of vision or something for that land, just so that everybody's got a bite at it, because it's important.
That it's very important.
Right now, it's all undeveloped. 10 years from now, who knows? You know, and when that solar breaks ground, man, everybody's going to be screaming about that, just because, you know, they're displacing the pronghorn now, or, you know, it's no longer vacant. And those are the complaints we get, you know, when vacant land becomes built, you know, in the rural environment, everybody starts throwing up red flags. Up until that point, everybody would have missed every public meeting, every sign, every single thing we had done trying to reach out. It's not until the shovel hits the dirt that anybody notices.
Well, and I think there are people in the community that if they know how important it is in the long term, that they will get involved. We just have to keep after them.
I hope so.
But
I really hope so.
You know, one of the things, you make a great point, is that I've heard in the past dealing with other area developments is, you know, especially in the case of Prescott Valley, a lot of people feel they've lost their identity because everything has been, you know, you've got rows of stucco houses, rows of, the identity of Prescott Valley is gone. So when you mandate every single zoning and there's no flexibility that that zoning can ever be changed, you're basically just creating more of the same. And then the identity goes away, which is why, you know, again, I keep referring to Kirkland, but if anybody's not been to Kirkland, you need to go out to Kirkland. Because that's Arizona. That was our identity. Those ranches, we don't want that to become another Maryvale or another Granville, you know, because when you start to, you know, mandate things, you lose your identity. You just become another community of row houses. And so the people on the periphery are going to be fighting even harder to maintain their vision. But we have to honor that. It may not be what, you know, the county might think, oh my God, well, we have no zoning on this piece of property. We can't control it. Well, there is this thing called organic. You know, it organically happens because it's part of the identity of the area.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree. So
this is John Black. I have one concern
cities are
that
looking the same.
Hold on just a second, John. Just go ahead and finish your thought here,
Joe. Adding to her statement there, yeah, I've been seeing this a lot. You could drop somebody, take somebody from Flagstaff and drop them, say, in the U district in Tacoma, and they would still think they were in Flagstaff. That's how similar things are becoming. And I'm seeing that more and more in the cities as I've, over the years. And it's like, the identity is
regulation. It's because of regulation.
Yeah, and I'm surprised even how close they're putting these houses together, like especially in Granville. I mean, literally, you can't even put a piece of paper between them in some cases.
That's called a zero lot line, and that was passed on the urging of the builders, and nobody pushed back. I was part of that back in 1989 in Phoenix.
Yeah.
It's called a zero lot line.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of those in my, in Washington, and now I'm seeing them here, and I'm just concerned about the safety of
I don't believe they're conducive to county development at all. Zero lot line. We've got one project right now in the Verde Valley that is a nightmare. Was approved 20 plus years ago as a zero lot line. Well, the problem is they can't grade. There's no ability to push the house far enough back on the lot to get grade to get a driveway in now. So now they're tearing everything up, destroying the whole environment over there just to put in houses right now. And so, there's a lot of issues.
At the end of the day,
No.
Has to be is that every community has a right to create its own sense of place. And our plan document has to honor, respect, advocate, and ensure that that goes on until the community itself decides it wants to evolve in another way.
Yes, exactly. And John, you had a question or comment?
Yes, I was reading through the Coconino comprehensive plan, and I was struck with the fact that, for example, the city of Flagstaff, which is incorporated, and the areas around it, which are unincorporated, it's written into the comprehensive plan that they are to work together toward a regional plan. And I'd like to see some verbiage in our comprehensive plan that addresses that issue. If I'm living inside the boundaries of an incorporated city, the things that happen just outside those boundaries impact me. and I am a citizen of Yavapai County. So what's the process by which we ensure that even though a person's living inside an incorporated community, they still have a voice in the county decisions? Could we articulate that? And I'm not specifically proposing any wording, but I'm just saying I'd like to see some section in the comprehensive plan that addresses that issue.
Okay, very good. It's something that we can definitely include down the line on that, but yes, every county resident has a voice at the table, and essentially a vote. At the end of the day, every one of them has a voice at that table, so. Does anybody have anything else?
Yeah, one other thing. How are we going to deal with interest groups? For instance, CWAG.
CWAG?
They're about 100, 200 folks. They come from all over the county.
Yep.
How are we going to work with them and give them a voice in this group?
Basically, they're part of the overall process for public participation, getting them involved. I've already reached out to them. They already expressed a lot of interest, obviously, in the water resources element of the comprehensive plan. So they've got a lot of interest there, obviously. I've encouraged them, if they wanted to submit a community vision, of their own, of the group, to please go ahead and do so. That they can get a voice in, we can get that included as part of, the overall package. They absolutely have a seat at the table here.
Okay.
And then same thing, Verde Valley Food Council was the same thing. They're Verde Valley centric, but, it's not necessarily tied to land use or anything else, but, we start talking about food deserts and, the issues of getting food to people. I think that does start coming into the comprehensive plan. I think that is a discussion for land use, and a discussion for several of the other elements. So I'm trying to really encourage these special interest groups to get us information that we can all look at and analyze and include,
So I would encourage everybody that knows of interest groups that might want to be involved, that we let them know that this process is available, because I know I had to tell them about it.
Yep.
And then once they heard about it, then they want to get involved. So.
Yes. Does anybody else have anything? I just want to thank everybody today for, your time. I want to thank you for your comments. We've written them all down. I know Andrea's back here taking notes as well. But I want to thank you. And from my point of view, from my seat, this is a discussion I want you guys to have. Don't ever feel offended about saying something that, we put in a report that you don't agree with. Your voice matters here, and I cannot stress that enough. The department, me, Kazi, we have no dog in this fight. We're putting a position forward. Please let us know if you think we're wrong, if you think we're right, if, whatever here. This is the discussion that has to happen. So I really appreciate everybody's openness and willingness to have that discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion?
I don't need a motion. I think we know what that motion is. Whoever gets to be chairman down the line can go